Hi you guys, it's me Eugene. So this is another book review. So this is a book I just saw on Readsy. Readsy has a list of books that they recommend, and Readsy is where I put some of my short stories from my creative writing classes. But yeah, this book is about race and struggles, and it's like an autobiographical poetry book by Jacqueline Woodson, and she's Jacqueline Woodson. And yeah, it was a really good book, and I could understand a lot of it, and it was sometimes written poetically and narratively and like it was really good, right? So this is like a summary but also some analysis, and we'll understand, okay? So yeah, I'll put the link in the description box if you want to purchase one copy of the book. Of course, I know like these authors who are New York Times bestsellers, like they don't need me to like advertise their books, and I'm just a humble tutor who just wants to analyze books for everyone, not just for my students but for people who also need help, right? And just to understand things and to see if this might be a book you like, or you might be African American and you can relate more with this book than I can, and that's good, right? That's what I want to just show. And sometimes the people who are not in your race or ethnicity actually do more good things for your race or ethnicity, right? There's that concept, right? If you understand what I'm saying, like sometimes you have a race, you have ethnicities, but sometimes another person might do things that are more beneficial for your race and ethnicity than the people in said race or ethnicity, right? That's what I love. Really is so powerful, right? So okay, Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. She was born in Columbus, Ohio on February 12th, 1963. She dreamt that brown children could be free and who they wanted to be. The historical context was MLK with Alabama, as well as the March on Washington, and there's also context through JFK was the president during some of that time frame. So Miss Woodson was born 7 years after Rosa Parks' refusal to sit farther in the back of the bus. She describes how her mom does not know which great African American figure she'll be like, but she is nonetheless destined for greatness. Her family lines had many professionals in the athletic, scholarly, pedagogical, and legal senses. Civil War history is described and related with William J. Woodson, one of her relatives. Miss Woodson was born from a very young mother in her early 20s. Miss Woodson uses an analogy to describe how her brother saying to take her back because they already have babies and because he has other siblings is just like saying, to get a refund for a gift. And then this is one big event that happens, and her uncle Odell was hit by a car, and that was a significant experience that impacted her entire family in more than one way. Miss Woodson was forced to understand etiquette in an obtrusive, callous way, instead of in a natural, subliminal way. For instance, black people could not look at white people directly in the eye, right? So I'm trying to look at you guys in the eye with my webcam, but anyway, I'm trying to read also, so anyway, let's do this, okay? The home protects the children from the dangers, toils, snares, and troubles of the world. There is beauty in life and death, pain and comfort. Silliness and capriciousness of youth are two concepts described. Miss Jacqueline Woodson's mother's cousins recount when they had fun memories. Being tired from interrogations, incessant questions is portrayed. Black people are tired from hearing these from white people. Her parents in their wedding photos are described as looking either beautiful or handsome, depending on the gender identity, right? So her father is described as handsome and her mother is described as beautiful. However, they both also look sorrowful, despite their beauty or handsomeness. They were determined and hopeful, yet angry and pesky towards one another, culminating into their final fight after Miss Woodson's first birthday. Their final fight, so they divorced, right? So the fruits and vegetables that her forefathers and foremothers grew on agricultural lands owned by white people represented their future descendants and the future people of Africa, right? Of the future people of Africa, right? Who will be rightfully known as African Americans, right? They believed in the goodness of earth and of one another. So their mother doesn't approve of the word ain't. Ain't in their house or anywhere. She does not want to represent their ethno-linguistic identity. Similarly, in my social justice course with Professor Green, my classmates and I learned about Vershawn Ashanti Young's scholarly article related with how Black people should be proud of their ethno-linguistic identity. He mentions how there is a dichotomy for Black people between what is spoken and written in schools with teaching staff and classmates versus what is spoken and written at home with loved ones. He argues that segregationist tactics have never really ended after Brown versus the Board of Education. Using jargon instead of formal grammatical conventions is how Black people can express themselves at times. Dr. Young cites Smitherman in this idea, and then this is my own example. Like, for example, the boys, like, you know, when people say like the boys got to do what they knows is right? That's like maybe not completely grammatically correct, but it's still, you know, it's something people say maybe, right? So Dr. Young argues that dialects already shape standard English. So he believes in the value of code meshing rather than code switching. Code switching means that you go from one language or dialect to another language or dialect, whereas code meshing means you incorporate the ideas and terms of a distinct language or dialect into the host language or dialect, the majority or mainstream language or dialect, right? So does assimilation rather than distinctiveness done for discrimination. So Dr. Young describes how former President Obama has been both linguistically professional yet casually relatable through code switching, and former First Lady Michelle Obama also could be relatable to the Black people of America, like when she said, "Ain't no Black people in Iowa," and she called Obama her baby's daddy, right? So those are examples of more colloquial and like less formal phrasing that, you know, Dr. Young wanted people to, you know, incorporate more in language. Okay, so Miss Woodson describes how she lets people walk over her and her family members and talk over them because they all had to accept the treatment as Black people. Her grandmother said to Jacqueline's mother that she can have kittens but not dogs. Does she stereotype dogs as aggressive, rowdy, ill-tempered, a lot of trouble or work, incontinent, poorly trained, prone to betray, and so forth? So a colored people's school building was burned while they were partying for the senior dance. I attended a dance before, but not at my high school or college, but at Governor's School for the Visual and Performing Arts and the Humanities at Radford University for a summer program. I did not really feel comfortable there, so in the party place. So I just played cards with some people, and like I guess I most likely have more than one diagnosis or disability because I'm an introverted person. However, schizophrenia does overlap with these sentiments that I have of being socially distant from people, not only in the sense of COVID-19, but also just in the sense of regular temperance. So white people were angry because the Black people were having fun, right, in the book for the party. The Black people, after the building burned down, had to end up going to a lower school. This book, of course, is a poetry book, so there are poetic elements, like she says the term Southern superstition. So that's, you know, alliteration, and she's emphasizing how the superstitions pervaded the South as their mouths gossiped and garrulously spoke about how brown people simply were people to be mocked at and squashed like ants. It also reinforces the sense of the snaky sound of the S syllable, and, you know, Southern superstition, right? Appearing enticingly exotic and surely and superbly accurate, right? In a persuasive sort of way. So Miss Jacqueline Woodson and her family members were all Jehovah's Witnesses at the time. In Switzerland, one man, for my own personal relation, like, to this, for religion, like when I was in Switzerland, one man gave me a Jehovah's Witness flyer at one point. I felt like that was really sweet because I love learning about other religions and cultures and ethnicities. I did not want to be the only one advocating for my own beliefs. It can really be humbling to learn about other people's expertise, knowledge, and life stories. So back to the book. Miss Woodson describes the concept of family protection, where the family members must not let any one person slip through the cracks to be trampled over like during Black Friday. This protection is contrasted with societal scars that exist in our hearts and in society in general. The love in a family should overflow into the surrounding community, which is a concept in my church. Of course, even families argue and family members do not always get along, right? Miss Woodson and her family first lived on Bristol Street in Brooklyn, New York, and then on Herzl Street in Greenville, and finally on Madison Street. Miss Jacqueline Amanda Woodson says how she is proud to write and sign her name. This is another moment where I'd like to pause and mention the fact that 25% of New York Times bestselling novels or books have been written by ghostwriters, meaning writers who are anonymously and commercially viable have used their skills to highlight the lives and stories of other people. Sounds good, right? It is a highly profitable, exceptionally lucrative business model. These ghostwriters, of course, have the abilities and talents to write well, and surely in many cases there are some details and outlines that are provided for certain subjects by the solicitors who seek out these ghostwriters. It isn't good to judge any one occupation, as the spectrum of artistic talents and intellectual abilities range from diverse types of creative, intellectual, culinary, cultural, musical, pedagogical, administrative, so many different types of occupations, right? So yes, Miss Woodson should be proud of signing her name, yet it is not just the name that matters, but the intentionality behind one's name, right? And also, in terms of names, like, trans people, we know, right, non-binary people end up changing their names, right, in many cases, thus sort of eliminating all the cultural associations and upbringings that their first names have, right? So some change their names regardless of being trans or non-binary, and the fact that women have to change their last names, right, for their husband's sake can appear misogynistic, right, to some women. So names typically denote good qualities that we should all emulate on a routine basis. Okay. So, of course, those people who they have their skills and they can use their talents and abilities, right? But it's just, unfortunate sometimes, when people are not, you read these New York Times bestsellers, you think those authors are the authors. You never know for sure, right, who is actually writing the book, right? But we have to read what we need to read, and yeah, of course, we can still learn from the books because, they're written well, but it's just a shame, right, when people are not who they say they are, like I've always been saying, right? It's always in life, there's that, we want to trust things, and we want to trust what we read and whom we talk to, but things are never as they appear, right? Just like the J.R. Tolkien poem, right? It says things are not as they appear, all that glitters is not gold, right? So yeah, and those people, okay, so anyway, the repetition of Kingdom Hall happens a few times on page 160. This reinforces the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses feel that every modern religious artifact that they possess brings them closer to the biblical olden artifacts, right? And the settings and artifacts, everything that they used to have, right, in the olden days, right? The temples, the Ark of the Covenant, all those things, right? So Miss Jacqueline Woodson gets suddenly jealous of Maria's new best friend, Diana. This is like what happened with me and my two friends, Kosei Matsuda and Yoshinori Takashima. They liked playing certain video games that I never really enjoyed as much as they did. Like, for example, Maple Story, which is a Korean computer game with many types of guilds, classes, and magical abilities. League of Legends, which is a hero-based RPG on the computer. And Penumbra, which is a horror video game. And other ones too, maybe. So I slowly stopped going to sleepovers because we all aged and realized that we need to focus on college, right? Yeah, and also because I didn't because I didn't want to play those video games, right? So, certain ones. So after my hospitalizations, I also did not really want to converse with anyone because I felt like no one would understand my specific mindsets and feelings. I also didn't know how to articulate like my sorrow, pain, frustration, and confusion. So Miss Jacqueline's mother says that accidents do not exist and that everything happens for a reason. While I know this is a saying, one that some people stand by, I personally disagree with this sentiment. Fate does not describe every situation. So please do not be brainwashed right into thinking that. Accident is a real word and a real occurrence, right? So Mrs. Angela Davis was on the FBI's most wanted list for a time, even though Miss Jacqueline Woodson describes her as a virtuous member of the Black Panthers who wanted racial rights for Black Americans. Well, I think everything should be learned to some extent. Sometimes we lose sight of the truths, educations, and understandings deep in our heart, in our hearts, in our schools, and in our social circles. So I just want to end on this note, like truths are things that we learn through experience and through our interpretations of scholarship, philosophy, and religion. Educations are things that we are grown up learning in a receptive, objective position, like theories, formulas, grammar, literature, workbooks, textbooks, worksheets, tests, histories, cultures, exams, quizzes. And then understandings are things that we learn by talking and interacting with one another. So all three are necessary, all three are valid, and all three must be balanced harmoniously within each of our psyches. Right? The truths, the educations, and the understandings, right? So that's the note I want to end on. So that was a summary and some analysis and comparisons, okay, for this book. So I hope you guys understood what I was saying. It's just a short summary and review. Yeah, I liked the book by Miss Jacqueline Woodson, and she's yeah, it was really interesting, right? An interesting concept to include her own autobiographical content into poetic form, right? And yeah, the lines were short. A lot of the lines were short. It was a short book because there were many spaces, right? Many spaces. That's usually poetry has many spaces to have. And yeah, sometimes people say like you shouldn't include too much personal information in poetry. But I also kind of like that. I like that sometimes, but I don't usually say real people like in my poems for the most part. Usually I don't want to do that, and just there's different purposes for the poems, right? And some people just prefer these cryptic kind of poems and archaic poems that are not really to the point, not straightforward. People like to go roundabout, in a circle, and to, in your car, just going around in a circle. Some people like that more when it's not clear, when things are not clear in the words. But yeah, it's, sometimes that's, the magic of poetry, right? It's not always, it can be interpreted different ways, right? And that's, we have to understand, and, that's her, the book was her, a lot of poems, and, a lot of chapters, her poems, and all flowed together well, chronologically and spatially and everything. Lots of different ways it flowed. Her poetry book, Miss Jacqueline Woodson, yeah, it was really good in the focus on race and the history, her relatives, and how she experienced things, right? Yeah, and did I say she got jealous, right? Miss Jacqueline Woodson, she got jealous of her best friend Maria's new best friend Diana, right? And then I mentioned about my friends too, how they liked certain video games and how I was experienced certain things too, right? Where I didn't feel connected to some people, but yeah, so she had that experience too, where she was sad and jealous, right, of her new one of her friends who made a new friend, right? So she was kind of left out, right? Like in the Bible it says like, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, but in real life, and the concept of the Trinity, but in real life, groups of 3 are not always easy to handle, right? When you have groups of 3, usually it's going to be 2 of the people are going to be closer friends, right? When you have groups of 3 people, there's always going to be the 2 people that are going to be closer friends than the one person, right? It's always how it is in life, and you can believe in your Trinity and you can believe the power of that, but in real life situations, like that's how I've always felt, like not just for that one group, but in other groups too. There's if there's even more than 3 people too, like there's always some people that are just closer friends, and you have no way of inching in between, and you're inching in between those 2 people, right? Because it's just some people are just never able to have wider social networks, right? And people are just satisfied with everything that their life is going on, and they feel no qualms. So yeah, that's just something I realized, right? Okay, thank you.